Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are here watching on YouTube, you might see a little link down below, and you can click on it. You'll end up in Zoom. If you click on that link, you'll end up in Mukana, and that is where you become one of the producers. You actually run the show. We can't do this show without you. So we depend on your questions and your votes, because we talk a little bit more at the top of the hour than we do at the bottom of the hour. So the more you can get those questions in early and vote on those questions, the better the show is. So you're the producers. You decide what we're going to talk about. Best time to think of those questions is all day. Just write them down when they come to you. So that's our recommendation. Write them down on notes. Put them in notes. So you can even go to in Mukana, you can actually put them in and save them in your profile. And all you have to do is port them over on the day of the event. So think about that. If you think you can answer some of the questions, if you can be part of the panel here, then you just need to be here a little early. We open the doors at 6. At 6 o'clock, can't promise anything. It's a meandering conversation, but we're here to help you kind of work out your tech issues and figure out if you're ready to go. You need to be here by 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time to be part of the mic check, which is then part of the show. So make sure to get here a little early. We'd love to have you on the panel. It's not a matter of you knowing a lot of things, just knowing a bunch of things about one certain thing. Everybody here has different specialties, and that's what makes the show so great, is that we have lots of people with lots of real experience that are sharing it. And so it's great. Really, we'd love to have you here. Now, the first hour is general questions, any question you have about virtual production or media production. Second hour is something we've decided to spend a little bit more time on. Today, we're going to talk about our health. We're going to talk about ergonomics, and we're going to talk about how we kind of manage that process. And actually, Chris Fenwick will be running the second hour. I'm speaking of health, I'm going down and doing a walk. No, not health, but I have to leave and go down and do a walkthrough. So Chris is I was going to try to tie that in somehow, and it just didn't work. What you
meant to say is I have to actually get out of my chair.
Get out of my chair. Yeah, so exactly. Walk around and go into the outside world. Well masked, of course. Anyway, so Chris will be managing the second hour. And then tomorrow, 2 more hours of Q&A. Guy Cochran is going to be hosting. I think this is your first hosting, right? Guys like me?
Yeah, it'll be my first. Yeah. I'll give it a shot.
So everyone's got to get here early and take care of Guy as he works through it. But I think it'll be great. It'll be 2 hours of Q&A, and then Saturday, of course, is the long day. We'll have 2 hours of education. We're working on something that, regardless of whether it goes through or not, it's a really interesting process of really talking about how to rethink education. So we've been we mostly just talk about it and what we're doing and talking about little details, but now we're kind of getting into a more like, okay, what if we actually did this for, let's say, 300 to 500 students, and what would that look like? And so we're talking about that on Saturday. Then Nick Justitian will be here at 10 a.m. to talk about Unreal. This will be the last Unreal one for about a month. Nick has too much to do, so we're going to let him focus on his fellowship with Epic, as well as a couple other projects he's working on with me. And so, but in about a month, Nick will be back with even more to talk about related to Unreal. But if you want to get some final questions in, come this Saturday. Then, of course, we got Mad in the Kitchen in the afternoon. We open the comms at 3. Nate, of course, will be cutting again and calling the show. So it's exciting, and it's an incredible learning opportunity. So you can hear the pre-show at 3 o'clock. The show happens at 5, and then we start talking about what happened between 6 and 6:30, whenever the show ends. So definitely set up there's a registration that goes out with your email that shows you where to register, because that's a separate event. And hopefully we'll see you there. All right. Guy is also managing the questions today. So what we got, Guy?
All right. First one's coming in from Scott Mueller in Clinton Corners, New York. Has anyone heard about what the recently announced Zoom events platform will bring as far as features or production capabilities?
I don't know. It sounds like it's going to be better. Now, I have to admit, we're so happy with we've gotten so good at doing the things that we do. I mean, we have little back end things that we wish we had, but we feel like we're putting together some pretty interesting executions. But I haven't heard any details. Go ahead, Aaron.
I get the impression from what they've talked about that it's a sort of reskinning of on Zoom. I don't really know that it's going to be a lot more than that. Maybe a little more analytics and stuff, but
yeah,
that seems to be about it.
It'll be interesting to see how that goes. Go ahead, Jonas.
From the wording, you could think that they won't put production stuff into it because they say large businesses will use it to manage the backend and to have a website and a hub, and small businesses will use it to like just stream. So maybe some simple tools for smaller events, but I think larger events will be still produced into Zoom and not on Zoom.
I think that figuring out a low latency, medium latency solution that allows for peer-to-peer streaming is probably the most important thing that they could do for very large scale clients. You know, you can't put 250,000 people on Zoom. And so you can do that with Facebook Workplace. So, and the way that works is that you're streaming into a system, which then propagates from peer to peer within headquarters and so on and so forth. So I think that if they're thinking about those, that would probably be one of the biggest steps. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was going to say, as I read the stuff, it really seemed like it was mostly leaning toward managing meetings, managing registration, managing sales, managing
Right.
nothing about, you know, how the video looks or can I control everybody's audio, all the stuff we'd really love to see.
I know. I think a lot of us, because we customize that experience, like those things will make a difference. It just means that more businesses will be able to turn it on and make it work and everything else. It's just that oftentimes those solutions they're not customizable, and they don't really, the one size fits all fits almost no one. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see, you know, how it goes. Yeah, go ahead, Chris. Were you gonna say something else? Oh, then he froze.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there you go. Go ahead.
I was going to say, on a related note, based on some of the discussion that we had yesterday when you weren't here, I did tweet out yesterday that Microsoft Teams should just buy Riverview FM.
Yeah. Probably be good to do now rather than later. Next question.
Next one's from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Ford rolled out the new Ford F-150 Lightning all-electric truck, which is also a mobile power plant that would run a production studio. Would you get one?
I'm really interested in it, actually. I think it'd be kind of cool. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I kind of dug into it last night, and I think the most interesting feature is the frunk. Because there's no V8 engine up front, you could put luggage for a family for a couple of weeks in the front of that thing. But it does have big batteries. Most interesting thing from a truck standpoint, it has a full independent rear suspension, and they had to do that to put an engine back there.
Right. Yeah, Charles?
Yeah, I've been following this for a while. I'm a big fan of the industry starting to shift in that direction. I think from a construction of the trucks, it's going to be a lot easier for them to actually just build a skateboard, which is like the batteries and the engines and things, and then just build the coach on top so they could actually be a bit more modular. So a cost of construction to have multiple variations in vehicles will come down, which eventually will get the price decreased for the consumer, which will be great. But I think, I'm very excited for it. I have a bunch of friends that have a few Teslas. There's another pickup truck company that I can't remember the name of it, and yes, yeah, thank you.
Not that I'm tracking it.
Yeah, not that you're following. Yeah, I'm a big fan of them. I have a friend that ordered the SUV, and it's supposed to come next year. So I like the industry shifting in that direction. It's nice.
What I'm excited about with the skateboard is that I just want a box, and I've talked about this before. I just want a box without any driver area at all. That just is a self-driving box that has, a big 80-inch 8K screen that I can watch things. I have a little desk I can work at. I have a little bed that pops out that I can lay down in. I have like a little exercise bike I could watch and exercise if I want. And then I need to go to LA and the box just takes me there, and I don't have to. My wife asks, like, where would you put the windows? I'm like, nowhere. I don't need the windows. You can put a video screen out the back, out the side. That's good enough. So anyway, go ahead, Chris.
Another article I read was very interesting, and they talked about, back to the F-150 thing, they talked about the charging being a bit of an issue, and it was written in such a way that either A, you cannot use Tesla chargers with it, or B, they certainly didn't allude to the fact that you could use Teslas. Yes,
We're
Charles.
wandering away from media, but go ahead, Charles.
no,
real quick.
no, power management.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I don't want to get away from media, but all of the companies declined to use the Tesla network when Elon suggested it a few years ago because they didn't think that they were going to make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
15-inch
question.
screen, by the way. So they're back to
15?
media.
I want 80.
It has a 15.2-inch center console if you get the platinum or whatever high end.
I want 80. All right, next question.
Next one's coming in from Gabriele Losordo in Milan, Italy. I need to record an interview with two people sitting 5 feet apart. I have an X32 and two Sennheiser G4 lavalier microphones at my disposal. What settings would you use to prevent audio from speaker A going to speaker B's microphone and vice versa?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, since it's a recording, I would suggest doing it the more traditional way, which is dialogue editing. Bring it into your DAW and cut between the speakers. Don't have those two tracks playing at once. Pick only the track that you want to play and leave that in the timeline. And also make sure that you get the room tone so that if you need a longer fade in or fade out, you have something to fill in there to do that smooth transition between the speakers.
There you go. Yeah, go ahead, Tommy.
Yeah, is there really even a need for monitors if they're only sitting 5 feet apart? I assume they're Omni microphones, and I just don't see the point in monitors at all for that
No, I don't think
case.
there's. I think it's just the speaker. I don't think it's the speakers. I think it's just the people. I think speaker in this case is just the person A and person B. Next question.
Next one's coming in from TJ Asher. Did anyone on the panel watch the Ford F-150 product launch? And if so, what are your thoughts on the production?
Did anyone watch it? This is the problem now, is that we don't. A lot of us don't watch this stuff anymore because it's not really. I didn't even know it was happening. I saw it later. Go ahead, Chris.
Best argument for not recording things.
Yeah.
If there's a bit of fear of missing out, people are more drawn. You make
Yeah, I mean,
it a
I think
live
that's
event.
that's why conversation makes a big difference. Is because
Absolutely.
I'll get around to watching it at some point. Is kind of becomes the thing because it's not really live. But if Ford put out a 10-minute video about what is coming without anything else, so the day before and said, or 2 days before and said, and publish that everywhere, just get everyone watching it and then say, well, you're going to do a Q&A with the engineers and with the designers and everything else in 2 days or 3 days, we'd all be there. Like anybody interested in the truck anyway would be there asking questions and voting on questions. So you put out the video really fast and in a short amount, and then you push advertising dollars against that and talk about what's new, and then just say, and then you say coming on this date is a Q&A with the people who made it. That would be a compelling argument. Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Chris.
They used to do that. In fact, I was part of a group of influencers that would go to Dearborn, Michigan. We would get into the truck. We would drive the truck around, and then we'd be at the keynote, and we'd probably be posting it all over social network. They haven't done that in a few years.
But I'm talking about
ever
like
since the transition.
general public.
Yeah.
You know,
This would go to the general public a lot faster.
No,
but yeah.
But I'm saying, but I would have the influencers talk about it. But the goal is an event for the general public to ask questions. That's the thing that would draw a lot of people in. But giving the influencers access early to help build that audience, build that up, would be yet another piece of that. That's a really smart idea. Go ahead, Chris.
I can't imagine any company from a marketing standpoint and wanting to control the story ever wanting to open it up to the public. I realize there's ways to filter the questions, but it's
There's
all
ways to
just
filter
gonna,
the audience. So anyway,
Yeah.
but it doesn't work in a single execution. What you need to do is do lots of it. So you need to build a community, that's going to be part of that. And that's the community is, again, we'll keep on coming back to, is everything. Next question.
Next one's from Edwin Ruiz in Chicago. Does anyone have any experience with the Avaya webcam/huddle camera HC020 with HDMI? Its primary purpose would be for some basic remote kits.
Is this the huddle that a lot of us are using? Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, so I was looking at it and I didn't recognize any difference between that and the Huddle Cam HD. Perhaps Guy can inform me because I do have a few of the HDs and they look, let me see. It's right here. And the back seems very similar. Yeah, I wasn't exactly sure what was the difference. If they changed the sensor maybe to something better.
Yeah, Guy.
So that's what happens with a lot of these Chinese casings, is that the sensor and the firmware will be different. So I actually brought in some similar to this, and they were garbage compared to the Huddle Cam. It was a different sensor, different lens, and then there was a different menu structure. So in one of the pre-shows, one time we had, if you remember, Alex, we had the fish tank, and we were trying to color correct to gray. And we had a real challenge, but when we finally dialed it in, it looked great. You don't have all those features in these other models. I would say, Edwin, try it. I mean, like, you might be happy, B&H has a great return policy. You might be happy with what it is for the price, because it's like 142 versus 249 or 299. So buy them both and return the one that you don't like.
Yeah. I have to admit, with B&H, I've stopped feeling bad about that, because I feel like that's part of the business model is to buy a bunch of them, test them, send a bunch back. Because what B&H wins on is I don't get them all back. I forget about them. Anyway, next question.
Next one's from our friend Alex Gollner, London, Europe. How should I specify a room as an interview space for digital first events in a room with a small audience of up to 12 people? How to have camera/mic for in-person audience questions during digital first Q&As?
Well, I'll just say it's not digital first as soon as you put one person in the audience. It's a hybrid. When there's one person sitting in the audience, it's a hybrid. We just want to make sure we're clear, because the speaker is just going to talk to that person. So they're not going to look at the screens anymore. I mean, no, they may if they work really hard at it, but it's just not what happens. So they spend the whole time just talking to the person in real space. So anyway, so that's the first thing. And then can you explain a little bit more what you're doing, Alex?
Well, essentially what it is that I'm on the board of governors of British Film Editors, which is the British equivalent of ACE. And it looks like BAFTA are going to have education spaces at their HQ in the UK, in London. And I'd like to propose that we can provide very interesting people to have interviews with other people. And then in order to make it so that they're just not being used as a studio and it's a little bit of a destination, this could be combined with a bit of education. So the idea would be that there'd be people who would, 5 or 6 people in the audience just to be there while this is happening. This is for the next incoming years is the idea. And the idea would be that there would be an interview, and essentially the event would be an interview, so the people would be looking at each other, but then there would be a digital audience, and then maybe just a few people in the room to also ask questions in order to keep because essentially what we're doing is we've got at the moment we have digital events when there's 30 or 40 people watching an interview with, so for example next week we've got the interview with the Ted Lasso editors, and then the week after it's Ron Moore interviewing people from doing For All Mankind. And it would be nice eventually if we're going to do some of this live and make this enough so that BAFTA will benefit from us and we'll benefit from them, is to help them specify the room so it becomes an event for them and also for us. Which means making it so that we're not just using any old room, that there is a bit of a destination space.
I would, if it was me, I would focus everything on cameras and locations and being able to capture what you want to capture for a person talking there, not without any audience. It's when you start putting people in the room, it just they get in the way of the cameras. And so the problem is that they just degrade the quality of what you're sending out to the digital audience, which in this case will be 100 times or 1,000 times bigger than what you have in the room. So you're basically taking the experience away from, let's say, 5,000 people, or if it was Ted Lasso and you promote it well, it would be 5,000 people or more. And then you have a handful of people in the room ruining it for everybody else. I mean, that's how you should really view it. And I know I'm being rough, but you're literally ruining it for everybody else. Those 5 people are special for whatever reason, and now we're not getting eye contact. We're not getting spoken to. What you want is to have the Q&A, all the questions coming in from that. That's what we do here. You want the questions coming in from the audience. And the big thing is that the more I work on this, the more I just get that I don't want even 2 people in the room talking to each other, because I want the eye contact to be with the audience, like what we're doing here. The audience is sitting between you and I, getting an experience that is absolutely impossible in the real world. You can't stand between two people talking. They'd be going like this, and instead the audience is right there in between, getting that that intimate connection with those speakers, and that eye contact is right there. Just like, and the person who knew this really early on was Mr. Rogers, talking to the camera. And so the thing is, now he had a handful of people in there to do his thing, but I think that we really want to. It's really important. Like when it comes to average, what we've seen growing over the last couple of years is the eye contact is a huge part of average view time. So that when you go into a teleprompter, it changes how long people will watch it. I'm at a point now where I won't watch a hybrid. Like if I see it's a hybrid, not interested. I just turn it off. I'm like, I can watch the record some other time, and so I think that, but I think that is, the other thing is that now you can spend all kinds of energy on those cameras, and what I'm working on something similar to what you're talking about. And, what we're looking at is I want the the ability to play the high res frames back, right? So I want to be able to play the film the way it was supposed to be seen, or, as close to the artist intent as possible. But then I want those live interviews, and I don't want to bother trying to figure out how to get everybody in the same room at the same time and everything else. I'll just send them kits, and let them, be at home able to discuss that thing with me. Letting them do it themselves is usually a disaster. But if you have kits, you can send them out and let people interact with each other directly, and then play the videos back in. And if there's something to show, then you have a studio to show it. But if it's their discussions in movies, what you need is a high res streaming capability mixed with a low latency conversation and a Q&A system. Does that make sense, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know I'm a purist about this thing, and I just keep on banging on the thing. I was like, well, how about we just hybrids are okay? And I'm like, they're not okay.
No, I mean,
it's so boring.
I wouldn't want them, but the reason why I'm doing it effectively is to get BAFTA involved so that they see the benefit of British film editors, and then we get in on the money they've been donated to do this training program. And
well, but I agree
they wouldn't
with
be
all
able
these
to
things.
They wouldn't get a handle on saying, okay, give us the $2,000. Not very much money required to actually put these events on separately, and you benefit for it because BAFTA has their name on it, and the sponsors have their name on it. They can get their mind around saying, okay, we'll give you a small room where people will go know that is actually happening, and we're providing something that's physical that they can see that they've provided, and that can also be provided for other people. So it's kind of fitting into the way that the money and the budgets are for the people involved.
I still think having a studio that broadcasts out to the rest of the world is in my eyes more valuable, because there'll be more people. You're gonna make it more available. Like, a little education room with, like, to me, I hate, at this point, to me, like, spending my time interacting with, less than 50 people is not something that I'm usually willing to invest in anymore. To teach, it's just too inefficient, and so go ahead.
I was quite impressed by how Unilever has changed over the years, because I did their kind of main management event back in the mid-90s. And that went from the top very, quote, important people, the top 200 people, all coming from all over the world and meeting all the important people, and they're doing their networking in 1996, to in 2019, it was just happening at one of their factories that happened to have a bar that could be turned into a studio, and then it was just that people who worked at the factory were there just being used as bodies in order to make it so that people presenting could picture the audience of people all over the world. And they just did it twice for the different time zones for the 200,000 or 300,000 people in various offices around the world who could fly in, and they set up rooms like that in other, quote, important offices, and that meant that anyone could go. So I think they evolved it really well, and that was up to November 2019. It was before all this, so it was quite impressive. So that's really using the people in this room as kind of props a little bit, but enough so that eyelines.
The problem is that we're using them as props, and they're actually it's props that are actually damaging the experience for the online viewer. Like that's the crazy thing, is that it's just old. It's I get it. I mean, I'm dealing with this conversation with event planners every day, and they're like, well, we want to have them feel like they're in a crowd, and I'm like, we want the online audience, like, and we knew that this was going to happen. And when we started streaming, when the first stuff I did for Salesforce, there were 40 people watching online, and there were 2,000 in the room. It made sense to have a hybrid event, because there's not that many people watching. But now that the tables have turned, and now all the audience is online, and at that point they're the ones that matter. Like, and the thing is that and the longer we hang on to this physical thing, it's just holding events back, from where they could be, and and it'll happen. I mean, we're gonna have events with hundreds of thousands or millions of people, within the next year. There'll be I promise you there'll be an event by the end of 2022 that has over 1 million people in it, and when those events start cooking, everyone's going to realize that these little physical things are, nice little intimate things. It's fine to do little physical events. Like when we do camera tests, having everybody around working on them and everything else makes sense. But if you want to do an event to stream it, then just stream it, and if you're watching them work, that makes sense to have people in the room because you're watching 3 or 4 people work together on something and that's a different experience. But if you're doing discussion, it's not worth it. Like Aaron, real quick, and then we'll move on.
I just want to say that, virtual events can take lots of forms. I think, I work with these people covering the SpaceX launches in Texas,
Mm-hmm.
and they have, they stream on YouTube and they get, 500,000 or 600,000 people watching a stream. So there's 1 million people watching this thing, right? And they take lots of questions from the audience, and it's a big deal. It's a big production, but
Mm-hmm.
the community that they build is really what's important, right? It's this community around these people watching this show or watching this spectacle. And the other thing is, can you just take that room and kit it out as a interview space, or not an interview space, but a space for a single person to come into to broadcast from?
That's what I would do.
As opposed to having a bunch of people there, just set it up really nicely. Like you go to CNN and you have rooms where people just sit down and they're ready to go.
Yeah. I think that there's a future in building multiple insert stages, insert studios.
That's the word I was looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, we proposed doing that in a business model like 2 years ago. So anyway, Guy, real quick.
Yeah, the difference between Creative Live with their small audience and how they treat the camera versus I watch Peloton almost every morning, and pre-COVID they had an audience in riding the bikes with them, and now it's just a solo instructor talking to you. Like, I mean, you feel it, like they are talking to you. It's deeply personal. Like some of the mental health days that they have, you're like, I've actually been in tears on some of these. They're really direct. They're pretty profound. So I'd suggest if somebody can, it's free. You can sign up for a month or something and try it out. It's cool to look at the telemetrics, because I'm watching the PTZ. Like I can see the PTZ cameras, and I'm like, oh, there's a Panasonic. Oh, that's telemetrics. Oh, that's a TriCaster in the background. So it's kind of fun to break it apart too.
Yeah, the Creative Live, I have to admit, I haven't watched it for quite a bit of time, but that actually helped harden my opinion about putting just a handful of people in the room, because I always just felt like I was on the outside when I watched them. Like it was just a handful of people in the room and they're just talking to them and they're not really talking to you. And I was just like, and I just found myself not interested. Here's the thing is that people won't complain about it and they won't know why. They'll just lose interest and go do something else. Like that's the thing, is it's not that people are complaining about it. It's not that they're saying there's something wrong, but they just find something else becomes more interesting than that, because they don't have that eye contact, because they're not being heard, because they're not being interacted with, and so, it may take a generation to figure that out, but hopefully we can do it a little bit faster. Next question.
Next one's from JHB in New York. What is the best method for recording an audio podcast caller? Host is in the room and mic'd. Guest will call via phone, or any suggested hardware or software. Thanks.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, in terms of really high end audio fidelity, I would look into Source Connect, which has been the industry standard replacement for ISDN lines. But if you want to, go a lot cheaper or a lot more affordable, you can do Zoom with Urgel Sound On. That's been a pretty good alternative for us for doing remote monitoring of voiceover sessions, not recording quality, but it's good enough to do reviews and approvals and stuff. If the person is actually coming in through a regular POTS line, a plain old telephone system line, go look at the JK Audio that 2, which has a telephone line input and XLR outputs on that, so you could send it to a board for recording. If it's through a mobile phone, look at the JK Audio's Blue Driver M, and that's a Bluetooth connection. And also to that, the Dante solution with Bluetooth would also work for that.
And as soon as you get to the original audio on Zoom, the next thing is there's no reason to go any further than that unless they have a really good mic setup. Mic and treatment, like it's going to sound as good as some general connection. So, but if they have a good mic, the best way to do it is to double end it. So you record, let them record locally, and then you record locally, and you still want to record their side as well, on another channel with yours. So a lot of times we would have it where we would run it out to some kind of, for us, a sound devices thing where we record both those channels together. So you have the show, but you also have them record locally on their end. When we on almost all of our kits now, we're sending out MixPre 3s as even the smaller kits. We've kind of gotten rid of the direct ones just so that we always have a 32-bit float recording of the other end. But we still record our end on the same side of that. But Zoom is I think Zoom is probably the best audio right now for a low latency online. It's actually really strong. Next question. Oh, and the last thing, by the way, before we go to they need to be on Ethernet. Like the thing that will kill you is their audio phasing out. Mickey?
Yeah, just to add though, on mobile devices, I've found that FaceTime sounds a lot better than Zoom on mobile.
Interesting. Oh, you mean just if they're just holding up the phone? Yeah. Yeah. What?
No, I mean like the actual fidelity of the link that they're using for sound. For some reason, sounds better than Zoom on mobile devices.
That used to not be what FaceTime was known for. It's interesting. Yeah. Next question.
Next one's come from Roberto Barrow in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. A friend asked my thoughts on using a T-Mobile hotspot for internet connectivity at home instead of getting Verizon to run a cable to the house. What are your thoughts on that idea? Expensive and unstable.
Compared to running, whatever the fiber, you're going to pay a lot for that bandwidth, or it's either going to be expensive or slow, when they slow you down. If you get some kind of unlimited, it means unlimited to a certain height, a certain number of bits, and then they're going to, hit you pretty hard. So, you never want to do wireless if you can do wired. So wireless is something that you do when wired is not possible, in my opinion. Next question.
Next one's coming from James Fosling. You recently mentioned some Zoom camera black screen issue. Can you tell us what you found on this?
I think the black screen issue that we're having is that occasionally when first requesting a high-res video and you have an ATEM in line, the Zoom will go black, and the fix is to unplug it and plug it back in. Go ahead, Jonas.
Yeah, there are now multiple visual representation of the same problem. There is the that I had the glitching in the lower half. I saw that for Victor one time, and I found that that's the USB-B output of the ATEM Mini Extreme. So it actually matters into which USB output you plug in, because with the one I get the gray thing, and with the other one, I get the glitchy, so I choose the gray thing. So that's good to know. And the black thing, I have only seen on Mac people. So maybe it's a Mac thing, that it's black and not gray.
Yeah. Next question.
Next one's from Alex Gollner in London, Europe. Any news on using the new 2021 iPad Pro as an external HDR display for Macs using Sidecar and a Thunderbolt cable?
Has it arrived, Charles? Today? Is it today?
I've been anxiously waiting. I was actually just checking going to arrive tomorrow. I've been checking it every day like a fool. Yeah, that is the plan right now, is to actually connect it through Sidecar. That's something that a lot of people have done before. I haven't seen anything from the embargoes that lifted from iJustine and everybody else.
It's not what they'd be thinking about.
Yeah. it's just us in this group and a couple of other people. But it would be interesting. Now, what I have seen is that people do connect it to like an XDR monitor, but it's actually just a mirror of the iPad. It's not just an external screen.
Right.
And there have been some talks on a few sites about, will that be changed at WWC, DC? Will they change the software? It seems that there is a lot of horsepower. There's a Lamborghini and you're stuck in traffic because of the OS. Now, how would that change?
Right.
So,
yeah. Go ahead, Alex, and then Mickey.
It's interesting. In the actual launch of the iPad Pro, they did actually show the Pro Display XDR plugged into an iPad Pro, and as long as the app knows about external screens, then that will work. So I think LumaFusion was the example app they had running, connecting with the Pro Display XDR connected. So in theory, of course, that means the iPad Pro is sending out the right HDR metadata to that display so that you can do it via Thunderbolt. Matthew Panzerino replied to my tweet, because I did a tweet listing 18 different people who had not tested this, who had done reviews. So I checked them all. And he said that it's no different. But I don't know if Matthew Panzerino, Mac expert, actually really knows enough to be able to test this properly. So we'll
Go
see.
ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, just wishful thinking. Since we have Thunderbolt and an M1 processor, drivers to be able to support a capture card would be amazing.
It would be stunning. Yeah. So I can't believe, I mean, it's all there to do it now. So there's no reason why we can't have video into the video in and out even from the iPad. So we'll see how that goes. Next question.
Next one is coming in from me. It says, with the new push of office hours to YouTube, would we be able to multi-pin a 2-up for second-hour conversations?
Yeah, I mean, what we're going to shift gears to a whole bunch of things, and we're going to start experimenting with that next week. So we'll figure out how far we can take that. I have some ideas around that, or also around ISOs. Because there's this Zoom ISO thing, and so. Our first 4 computers that are in our office can theoretically pull 32 ISOs out, like between the 4 of them, because it's just limited by the cards. So we could theoretically just take this whole panel and just push it to our switcher, so that's a whole another thing to think about there. So we need to think through it over the next couple of weeks. And so, the plan is right now we'll just start pushing. We'll start streaming it. But we'll start playing with how far we can go probably by the end of next week. And then the week after, there'll be a lot of experimentation. And then, so we're trying to kind of ramp up in quality. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, as a panelist, we get to see the gallery view. And as an attendee, they just see the person talking as active speaker. And there's been a couple times when just like your reaction to somebody's conversation was really worth seeing. And it's like, man, I wish everybody could have seen the reaction. Like, whoa, that was a doozy or something like that. So having the 2-up, or the ability to cut to see the reaction shot.
Well, what I think is, because we have I think we can push through Zoom ISO if it's ready. We can push all the outputs, the whole gallery into a constellation, and then the constellation, then we can build super sources with mix effects, and just have a lot of we'd have to. This means that our team gets bigger, here, where people are firing up and building a very complex show, in there, and so it's something that we're really close to, because there's not really any reason why we can't. So it's something that I meant to do this week, but of course I had to shoot this week. So next week we'll start experimenting with it. And I'm just going to warn everybody that it may be rough as we move to it. But we will start screen scraping and streaming next week. And then to the new YouTube page, which will be an office hours page. And so it'll be basic, but we'll start moving over and starting to kind of re-gear the whole thing. Go ahead, Mickey.
Do we know what resolution the monitor is that we're going to be screen scraping? Just because if we do multi-pins, the larger that monitor, the larger those 2 or multiple pulls.
I'm not that interested in multi-pins. Like I'm interested in pulling all the ISOs out, like, so grabbing all the video frames in full res, and then because then we can build them into super sources. And what really got me going was thinking about the whole mix effects, thing of being able to just kind of power through it and have for the, for us, we'll still see the grid, and occasionally we'll come back to the grid as a group. But a lot of times it'll be the people who are raising their hands and the people who are, like it'll go into a 4-up, and then it'll go, and then what if they went to a 4-up and then a 3-up and then a 2-up and then back to the thing, okay, next question. And then go, like there's a lot of complex stuff that we can do that would be really interesting. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, in the past, just to test out, I've sucked the show into AWS and did a 4K stream, and then was grabbing everybody in HD and pulling them in, and I was just like, wow, I want to run downstairs and like look at this on the big screen on YouTube in 4K, because now all that HD glory is still there in the boxes instead of smashing them down to something really tiny, especially like in the cooking show. I mean, some of those shots of like cutting and whatnot, you lose them, or the labels, you can't read the fine print any longer. So a 4K show coming out of AWS, it's no problem. And I think you got the bandwidth at your facility to pull it off, and the encoders.
So we can do 4K.
HDR, come on, let's go.
On our way. Here it comes. So, all right, next question.
Next one's coming in from Talalik Miguel Lopez Waterman in New York. Can you speak to the pros and cons of using "this content is made for children" tag on YouTube?
Unless you are building content specifically for children and very carefully in a very narrow area, you should never hit the "made for children" button. It is like I will now make your life completely complicated. And everything is going to be hard and everything about this video. Like, just don't do it. There is no pros unless you are specifically building content for children. It doesn't mean like made and children could watch it. It means made for children, and, with all the HIPAA requirements and all the different things that you have to do to make that work. But I would be super careful. Even if I made stuff for children, I wouldn't touch it. Like, it's just, I can just tell you, it's just a nightmare of a button, I'd make stuff for children and then not click out on, because it's not worth it. Not worth the trouble. That's my opinion. And I've worked with folks who have tried it, gone down that path, and it just gnarls everything up. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Alex 40 Gollner in London, Europe. Thoughts on Apple's new accessibility features coming later this year?
Apple's very focused on it. Aaron, pretty quick. We're running out of time.
Apple has long been a proponent and implementer of forward-thinking accessibility features, and it's Accessibility Week, and they have pulled it off.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that Apple takes advantage of is the fact that they own the operating system and the hardware and everything else, and so they can build an integration between all of these things that is much tighter and easier for them to do, rather than getting everybody else to come along. They can just do it, and there is definitely a very strong commitment to doing it. With internally, it's always a priority. Alex, real quick, and then we'll move on.
This actually may be a side effect or a benefit from the R&D being used to control AR and VR, just moving your hand. So it could be that they'll actually make a watch with no screen that actually uses Apple Watch bands, and you just put it on your wrist and then use gestures just with your hand down the side of and while you're actually interacting with AR and VR.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Brian Carpenter in Cleveland. When a panelist state their audio chain in the pre-show, is it customary to mention FET heads and cloud lifters? Those devices seem to be often suggested, but not stated or shown in Fenwick diagrams.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I think it would definitely be a plus if we mention those devices when we say our audio chain, because it helps us know which preamps are capable of driving, lower sensitivity microphones.
Which preamps are worthy and which are not.
Yeah, I think most of us on the panel though don't require those amplification devices, because we are using most of us are using higher end preamps.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I mean, those are people are very nice about it online. If you talk to people privately that are in high end audio, there's a lot of like, they do not like either one of them at all. So I think that a lot of us are lean a little against those. I think that's probably why you don't hear us say them very often, is because we're not using them. Definitely a bias. When you can avoid them, you want to. It's just another analog thing that's going to raise your noise floor. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Alex Lindsay in Novato, California.
Was Alex L? I didn't say who I was.
Oh, but in the pronunciation in my teleprompter, it says right
Says
there,
Lindsay, that's right.
L-I-N-D-Z-I.
Right.
Right there.
Z.
What is Yeah, see it? It's right there.
So I thought I knew how to do this.
L-I-N-Z. All right. What is the best way to sync time code from sound devices to BMD 6K?
I thought I knew how to do this, and I've been having trouble with it lately. And now Mickey's going to have to pay the price that I can't figure it out. Go ahead, Mickey.
Okay, thank you. All right. So from your recorder, which is typically used as the master timecode generator
Yep,
in
that's
any
what we're
film
doing.
set or recording set,
Mhm.
you would want to jam a timecode generator box.
Yep.
That timecode generator box, you can hook that up via a whatever connector it is on the box itself to the mini jack input of the pocket camera.
Yep.
And one key thing there, though, is that you will not see timecode rolling on the monitor of the pocket camera unless you tap on the screen on the counter at the top center of the pocket. Then you'll see timecode. And I'll quickly screen share a video I have here of the pocket. And here I am with a timecode box in the pocket camera. And if I tap on that screen and if I just frame by frame through it, initially it says 00, but when you tap on that counter, where is it? Come on. It switches over to actually showing timecode instead of the elapsed time of recording.
Well, and the problem that I had is that I saw that, and it says time code, and it has TC and external. It was on.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm getting external data, but it wasn't matching. And in this case, we were getting a tentacle, which is what our audio recordist had.
Gotcha.
And so we were checking it on the phone, and looking at the time codes were not close. So what we ended up doing is putting it on a channel. So we just pushed the
Audio
time code
TC.
into like the left channel, right channel. One channel is just getting reference audio, and the other one is from the camera just to get room audio, and the other one's getting time code. To be able to pull it later. But I couldn't figure out how to. It just wasn't lining up, so I didn't know if I was missing something. It sounds like I'm doing the steps. It's just a matter of figuring out what piece of that is missing.
Yeah, first thing I would look at with that is if timecode frame rates match from the generator and the camera. And also second, I would look at if there's any chance that the camera might be set to running off speed.
Okay. Yeah, it was definitely not off speed, but I'll check it. It could be a 2398 to 2997 problem. So I'll take a look at that. Okay, cool. Next question.
Chad Lafarge in St. Louis, Missouri, also known as the Chatinator. With NAB returning to Vegas this year, October 9th to 13th, what do you predict will be completely different or the same?
I think there's a high probability it's going to be a lot smaller. I just don't, the fall could be pretty complicated here, and in addition to that, I'm really interested in finding people in New York who are ready to cover NAB. And so just putting it out there, I'm really interested in getting a hotel room or a space inside of Javits or whatever that we can bring people in to interview and for us, to do that. Okay, chat, Chris, you're in. So I want people to cover it. I'm not going. It took me a little while to kind of come, am I going to go? Am I not going to go? I'd rather have all of you do that. And then I'll sit here and help I and other people that aren't going will manage the conversation, and I think that's going to be a bigger impact for a lot of us because it'll open it up. And so I think that's the biggest thing that I think is going to change for me anyways. It'll be the first real NAB other than last year that I've missed in 25 years, but I think I'm done. Go ahead, Jeffrey, and pretty quick. We're going to have to move pretty quick.
Yeah, you said, first of all, you said New York, and it's in Vegas, but
is it in Vegas? I thought that was in New York.
It's in Vegas, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I am
either way
planning to do it. So if you need help on that, let me know.
Okay.
And so I don't know. My thing is it's going to be about temperature checks and
your audio is coming apart.
Really?
Yeah, it's really cool.
It'd
be a cool effect, but yeah, there's something wrong with your audio. It's
okay.
It sounds like you're talking through a fan. Yeah. But yeah, for some reason I thought it was in New York. Maybe it's because the fall one is normally in New York. So if it's in Vegas either way, we're going to lean on who wants to go and manage a studio there. Next question.
Mike Dean in Arlington. Which live stream system would you would get you more freelance work as an operator? TriCaster, Blackmagic ATEM, Wirecast, or Livestream Studio?
My guess is TriCaster. Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
At least in my circles, I see a lot more work being done on between what is listed here on Blackmagic switchers, though I see a lot more on vMix.
Oh yeah, vMix is coming up to speed. Yeah, the big thing with TriCaster and vMix is they're hard to learn quickly. ATEMs, you can sit someone down and teach them really fast how to do it. So there's a lot more people. You're in a lot. It's a lot more competition in the labor side of things. If you go down an ATEM route, so there's a lot more work to do there, but there's also a lot more people that know how to do it. When you do TriCaster or vMix, you need someone who knows how to use it. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Aaron Husledge in Durham, North Carolina. Do you typically hire out grip and electric for your jobs?
Yeah. I mean, I'm doing that tomorrow. So, but we usually get we definitely hire, for most of our shoots, we hire it all out. I used to have enough to do it internally, but I don't anymore. Next question.
Next one's from Tlaloc Miguel Lopez Waterman, New York. Is there a way to use the new iPad as an external monitor if a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera 6K?
That's what we were talking about being able to have a capture card. There's no reason why we couldn't put a capture card into it. Whether it'll be available immediately is unknown. Go ahead, Charles, real quick.
Yeah, the only way that we've been able to use it just to monitor, and it hasn't been in HDR, it's been through a Teradek.
Right.
And we just send it to the iPad. And then, and the cool thing about it is that we've been able to have 4 separate streams from 4 sites go into the same iPad. So like the DP, the director, the whoever can actually sit there and see what's going to actually like call the shots, but also be able to sit like far enough away. So
yeah, it's cool. And I think that Teradeks have the ability to do HDR now too, transmission. So you could theoretically get some pretty interesting things there. Yeah, go ahead, Mickey, real quick.
Yeah, I believe either the Cube or the Serve, I can't recall, would be capable of that.
Next question.
Tommy Chance, and is Mukana going to be included with the switchover?
Yeah, actually, Mukana will be more prominent because we're going to probably slow or even stop people coming into Zoom. Like the primary viewing of it over time will be in Mukana, not in, because when the website goes up, people will register on the website to watch the show, and then they'll watch the stream, and then they'll still be part of the conversation, but it'll so we'll be moving past Zoom because really you'll get a better experience because eventually we'll be doing, to Guy's point, 4K. Office hours will be in 4K with lots of multi screens and everything else, and it'll look amazing, so it's definitely taking too long. It'll actually be more important in the next round than it is now. Good, Mickey.
Yeah, just real quick, like for the switch over next week, we should have a system in place for I believe Guy has been putting in the embed links into Mukana. So Guy should have those links beforehand.
The good news for that is that, we can give them to you ahead of time, because we can, once we move over to the stream, I can just create events in YouTube, and so YouTube for now, and then we may move to another platform, but for now, I'll be able to give you the links ahead of time, because now I can just schedule events, so it'll actually be a lot easier. In fact, what we probably should do is just be able to put all the whole week of links into Mukana and just have Mukana just go click, 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 and just grab the right one. And then Guys just checking to make sure we have the right one showing. So that's coming soon. Next question.
Cool. Mike Dean in Arlington. Hello from Virginia. First off, thank you for this space you have created. My question is, after work with TriCasters from New Tech for a while and seeing companies like Twitch using them for esports, how close to a setup like that can we get with Blackmagic Design, and would it involve SRT?
It just depends on what you're doing. I mean, you can get a show, most shows can look pretty similar, between a Constellation with something like MixFX Pro, you can get something that looks pretty close to the TriCaster. There are some places where, complex super sources will be harder to do, in that area. It gets, like with Mad in the Kitchen, I run out of I run out of DVEs but being able to swap them instantly is what makes that not really matter. So I think that you can get pretty close to it, and it's more stable. Go ahead, Jonas.
One thing that I noticed when my first live stream experience was streaming to Twitch, game content with OBS. And when I made the switch to an ATEM, the first reaction was, and why can't I move it? Because in OBS, it's just like so easy to click something and move it. And what I found is I really like the ability of the hardware and the limits it gives me, because it requires me to think before and plan it out. Like I have every shot planned and then I can just trigger a macro. That's one of the big difference that you can't like, oh yeah, he is over that overlay. Yeah, you can't fix it now in Fastly.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things you can do. I mean, and again, the cost is relatively low. I mean, not competing with OBS, but when you talk about a TriCaster cost, you can get a lot of hardware, for the same amount. And again, some of my deepest pain in live streaming has been usually at the hands of a TriCaster. So I will admit that I lean heavily against it. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. The Logitech Roommate seems to be an Android-based appliance with 2 HDMI outputs, 1 HDMI input, wired Ethernet, USB 3, and Bluetooth with support for Teams and Zoom rooms. Could this be useful in production as part of a remote kit maybe? MSRP seems to be about $999.
Wish it had two. What would make it really exciting is 2 video inputs. 2 HDMI inputs. Like we're just seeing so many places where we wish we had two windows. Like the cooking stuff but even in conference rooms and everything else, being able to swap back and forth would be super useful. But this looks cool. Yeah. But 2 inputs. If anyone sees one of those, like $1,000 or less device that will give me, ATEMs do it, but like an all-in-one thing that can just jump to it is something I'd be super interested in. Next question.
John During, Palo Alto, California. Does anyone use the Behringer Touch Mix Mini as a control surface for the ATEM Mini? Pros, cons?
I assume that that's connecting that to the audio interface, to control the volumes. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, I was going to say it really doesn't fit the design in my mind because exactly that. It's an audio interface. I'd want something that does much more.
Well, there's a lot of reason to be able to have some kind of physical audio interface to interact with your ATEM.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Is he talking Behringer or is he talking QSC? Because the QSC is Touch Mix. Behringer, if he's talking Behringer, I think he's talking Flow 8.
I don't. You might have to, John, maybe let us know, and maybe on another question day. Next question.
Philip Caldwell, Clemson, South Carolina. Best strategy for minimizing RFI/EMC issues for cables, HDMI, USB, Thunderbolt, Ethernet, etc., co-located with radio transmitters and antennas.
A lot of it is high quality cables. So for audio, Star Quad cables, you want to shield them also. Literally, I used to do it. I used to DJ weddings. And there was a place in Lookout Mountain off of Denver that had all the transmitters that were like 200 feet from the location. We used to cover everything with tinfoil. Otherwise, we'd pick up the radio stations on, in the wires. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure that you have shielded cables. I know with HDMI cables and Ethernet, that's pretty easy to find. I'm not sure about Thunderbolt shielded Thunderbolt cables. But yeah, it's also important to make sure that not only are the cables shielded, but also every single connector in the chain. Because if one of those isn't shielded, then it's not, the entire chain isn't shielded at all.
And with that, I need to get in a car and go do a walkthrough. I'm going to hand it off to Guy to finish. Is that right? Oh, Chris, there we go. I missed you, Chris. You moved in the grid.
I had to step away.
Yeah,
but I'm back.
So Chris is going to manage the second hour, finish the last couple questions, and manage the second hour. I will start this post show at 9:00 or very close to it, and it'll be sudden because I can't see you when I do it. so anyway, I'll do it from my phone. Like I've gotten good at that. So anyway, so everyone, I will see you. Guy is hosting tomorrow. I'm super excited about that. So come and support Guy and make it a great show. And then I'll see you all on Saturday. All right, bye everybody.
All right, where were we, Guy?
Next one is John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. When using an NDI discovery server, how do you account for devices that you can't point to it, such as NDI Sparks or PTZ cams?
Jonas.
I try to find something in the user manual. Since they don't mention a discovery server and you have no way of adding it, I suspect you can't.
I have little to no experience with NDI, but I know that the first time I set it up, I was shocked that I turned on something on here and then I pulled down a menu. I was like, oh, it's just something to select. I realize this is probably a much deeper thing, but sometimes it's pretty amazing. Jeffrey?
It doesn't discover on IP or MAC address at all?
We've done that.
It uses a custom MDNS stack, I think. So since the camera always will be local and there should be multicast enabled, it shouldn't be a problem. We use Access Server in the cloud, Discovery Server a lot in the cloud. So I don't think it's a problem. I didn't find a solution to do it.
Connecting can be a problem in a lot of things. I know that I bought the Mix Effects iPad/iPhone app to control the ATEM, and I can't get that thing to connect to the ATEM.
Did you punch in the IP address?
Yeah, I did the manual IP like you said. No worky.
All right, we'll have to troubleshoot that in the post show. Get it
Next
working
question.
for you. All right, next one is coming in from Mike Dean in Arlington. Has anyone used the SMAT TV? SMATV PTZ, which looks like the PTZ optics? If so, what are the pros and cons? Looks like we
Jeff?
might be stumped on that one.
You look like
Jeffrey
you're
got it?
Googling like crazy, Jeffrey. Yeah. All right. What does that look like? Oh, it's just a camera. All right. SMTAV. One of the things that I find interesting, I almost said annoying, interesting, is there are so many options for things. If everybody could just get together and make the one thing that's perfect, it would be so much easier. Right, Mickey? Like, why do we need 100 different lavs? Why don't you all just get together and make one good lav?
When the PTZ optics world like this, I mean, a lot of them are just like the gentleman earlier that was talking about the one from B&H. There's different firmwares, different lenses, so the housings and the gears and the motors might be the same, but then it all comes down to does it work? And so some people like Jeff Keithley are always recommending the Panasonics over something like the Bird Dogs, because the Bird Dogs like the new player, and they still got a little work with engineering to do, and so some stuff doesn't work perfectly out the gate. The Panasonic, it's in broadcast, it's tried and true, it works, but you're going to pay 10 grand for that HE 150 versus, a little less for the Bird Dog. So it just comes down to, researching and are you trying to save a buck to, soak up 8 hours of your time on tech support. So it's kind of one of those things where you got to do the research.
I thought your comment earlier about how a lot of times it's just the same plastic box and who knows what's actually inside it. Jeffrey?
Yeah, and hopefully my Crimson and Clover sound is gone. But when we were talking about the Avaya one, I actually texted a friend of mine that works over at HuddleCam to say, hey, do you guys license out your hardware to somebody else to resell it as a different brand name? And they came back with the answer no. So I'm guessing that this is exactly what Guy was talking about. Somebody made something and or they could buy parts from it and they turn their own camera into it to try and sell something, but it's not going to be as good as, well, heck, even the PTZ optics in all reality is not that great. So this could be even a step down from that. So
yeah. Next question.
Next one's coming in from JHB in New York. Not a question, just wanted to thank the panel for their honest and inspirational answers to my question yesterday about moving from behind the scenes to on camera.
That was a fun discussion, actually. It was really good. I was going to add to that. Somehow we left away. If you recall, the question was basically, how do you get over your fear of getting in front of the camera? And I had done a recording yesterday or the day before with one of our clients. And this woman was awesome on camera. Her camera was horribly out of focus, but she was great on camera. And I said to her, I said, thank you so much. The question I asked her is, did you write this script? Because she showed up with her own voice activated prompter on her phone right above her webcam. And she's a financial analyst person. She just wanted to do a good job. And I write the script, or did legal write the script and you rehearsed it very well? Because I think that's a totally different thing. And it was sort of a combo of both. The script was written, she made some adjustments, but she rehearsed it. She said, I did it at least a dozen times before we started this call. And I said, your work paid off. You did better than a lot of professional talent that I've dealt with in my career for 35 years. Thank you for putting all the work into it. Now, let's fix your camera for next time. Anyway, it was a good conversation. Next question.
Next one's coming in from our friend Carmi Vineswig in Redondo Beach, California. Has anyone worked with the Dish.tv?
Dish.tv, is that what you said? You broke up and froze. Is it me?
He's a lot frozen.
Internet storms.
Oh no, questions are
Yeah, Chris,
over.
you were freezing the last time you were talking too. So
that doesn't surprise me.
And he's back.
You back?
Oh, he's back. Look at that.
Sorry, I just got
so
Zoom unexpectedly quit. That was real cool.
Let's do Chris and then Mickey.
I was just going to say that Carmi put in a correction in the chat. It says it's dish.tc, not TV, whatever that's worth. But I still don't have any experience with it.
Mickey?
Yeah, I saw the prototype, I think 2 or 3 years ago in Singapore. The enclosure itself, the piece of equipment itself, felt very light and hollow and cheap. So I don't know if the actual production model is the same, but it didn't instill confidence in me. And I'd also be wary because since it uses UTC time code for, UTC time for the time code, it loses one would lose the ability of using the actual time of day as a reference in post-production, because if you're in a different time zone, your time code that is burnt into the clock, into the file, is totally off from the time of day from where it was shot.
So I have a question for you, Mickey. If you were developing a product and the chips that it took to make that product weren't heavy enough to put in the box, would you put extra weight just so it felt better?
Just make a smaller box.
What if it had to be a certain size for some other ungodly reason? I just think that's an interesting question.
It just feels like there's there's a ton of air inside.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Greg Mackey, I think it was Greg Mackey from Mackey Mixers, he injected in his potentiometers a non-conductive goo just so they felt smooth when you turned them. That was the secret to the old 1602 and then 1604. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Christian Ortiz in South Florida. Has anyone used StreamOn to live stream to Instagram? Seems to be like Yellow Duck, and there's a link here in the note.
Jonas?
I checked the code. It's the same private API that everybody uses. I would not use this one if you want to stream to an account that is important to you.
Interesting.
Because it is against the TOS and it's a reverse engineered API. So I wouldn't use it. Facebook will detect it and will punish you if they want.
All right. Next question.
Another one from our friend JHB in New York. What is the procedure for watching the post show? Thanks.
So that is a good question. In the email that you get to be a part of this Zoom meeting event, if you scroll down, there is a link to the pre-show, which begins at 5 a.m. California time. I just say California time because I can never keep track Pacific Daylight and Pacific Standard, so I never know which is which. But 5 a.m. California time, and then there's another link for the post show, which happens after this. Next question.
Well, we're ready to shift gears over to the health section.
All right, let's talk about health. Do you have a good chair? Do you have a good mouse? That's all I know. Let's go to the questions.
Actually, Chris has got his hand up. He's our resident health expert. What do you got, Chris?
Well, I wasn't sure if we're going to go to questions or if we wanted to talk a little bit
Yeah,
about
let's
things.
how many questions do we have, Guy?
2.
Is it oh,
Because I have some visual aids from the program that I've built, and I wouldn't mind sharing those quickly with people.
go for it.
If they want to see them, let me see if I can get it to work. There we go. All right. So this is just a typical setup on the left with using a laptop as a laptop by itself. And then on the right side is just a modification using a laptop stand and a separate wireless mouse and keyboard. I think what people need to understand about idle posture is that it is the position where the body exerts the least amount of effort to maintain the position. And all of the nervous impulses coming out of the foramen along the spinal cord, up in the neck, in the thoracic area, down in the lumbar area, are least impeded. And that's blood flow and nerve conduction. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Laptops should never be used by themselves for more than just, a quick little, jotting something down or sitting in a cafe for, a little while. But your default workspace should always be aligned. And I'll do it again here. Sorry about that double screen there. Should be aligned where the ear and the shoulder are over the hip. And in standing, the position is on the far right is the ideal position, lining up over the hip, the knee, and then the lateral ankle bone, which is what that is. If you look at the bottom there, that blue line on the bottom right, on all of them, the blue line shows where the ankle bone is lined up. And then the red line shows a deviation from ideal posture. Another other thing I want to add is that for every inch forward that the head is in front of that blue line, the weight of the head
I'm sorry, I'm looking around at the gallery and we're all like adjusting we're all
Right,
sitting up
of course,
straighter than we ever have.
And it's not about shoving the neck back when I give cues for my clients. It's not about shoving the neck back. It's about bringing the sternum up first and then dropping the chin down after the sternum is up. And there's other corrective exercises, long-term stuff. But this is the posture that scientists and doctors have decided is the least effort, the least compression on the heart, the lungs, the digestive system, all those things, the foramen in the neck. Like I said, the thoracic outlet syndrome, which is a thing that happens when the scalene muscles, and that has to do with the head being out of alignment. And when you do that, the scalenes, which are normally give enough space for those nerves to come out, when your head juts forward, the space closes down and there's no longer enough space for the nerves to flow freely.
Jeffrey.
Anyway.
Something I would add to that, Chris, is this thing right here. I've found when I go out to conferences and I take a handheld microphone with me, every time I move that handheld microphone to somebody, they do this. And they get closer to it. And I have a feeling we do the exact same thing, because having a microphone in front of our faces, we want to get to the area of the microphone sound. So somebody like Guy who's wearing a headset mic, if he has a little bit more opportunity to be more vertical than somebody like me, because I'm trying to talk to a device right there. So ergonomics of the microphone, if you use one, is a very important part too.
Go out on a limb. Charles, I know you appreciate your gym time. How does that affect your posture and the way you spend many hours staring at screens?
Heck, I'm glad that actually Chris mentioned that. I've always been very focused on that, just from the long-term effects of how I see some of my colleagues eventually have lower back pain. And I wanted to have Chris Comfort talk a little bit about the importance of having a strong posterior chain, which is essentially if that goes, you're going to eventually have a lot more problems. If you can maintain your posterior chain strong, which is the rectus spinae muscles, your glutes and hamstrings, which are essentially what hold you up and help you to be mobile. If you keep those strong, you can have a very long and healthy life and have mobility. As soon as you start to lose that, it's not that your muscles are holding you up, is your skeleton that is holding you up. And eventually from gravity, you will have compression on the spine, which will cause even more problems. So if Chris, you could speak about it.
Sure. And also connective tissue. So your skeleton, I think when you're talking about, Charles, is your connective, you start hanging off of your ligaments as opposed to the bones stacking ideally and then the muscles just doing their share of the work. I can tell you a few random things that I think will add into this. Our bodies start growing into a position in as little as 7 minutes of being in that position. And if you, as soon as you sit down, another random tidbit, if you have ideal posture and you're standing, as soon as you sit down, but change nothing else about your posture, the pressure on the discs in a low back increases by 50% instantly as soon as you sit. The other problem with sitting is that because your body starts to grow into any position it's in for, longer than 7 minutes, the hip flexors get short and tight because your hips are flexed at 90 degrees when you're sitting. And then counteractively, the glutes get weak and relaxed, A, because they're not being used, B, because they're in a stretch position, and C, because every muscle has an antagonist, and the hip flexors and the glutes are antagonists to each other. And the tighter and more active that hip flexor gets, by definition, it reciprocally inhibits its opposer muscle. And this is just for fluidity of motion, which is a positive thing for the human body to do, but it's a negative thing when we put it into an artificial position and for too long.
I'll tell you, this conversation so far has been simultaneously inspiring and depressing. Guy, I know that you're always out running and whatnot. How does this affect what you do?
Well, I said it in one of the previous episodes.
And actually, before I let you go, running your company, I realize you're not sitting at a desk all the time like a colorist. Maybe you are. How much time a day are you sitting at a computer?
I'd probably say 3 or 4 hours now compared to previously it was like 8 hours. I used to be a digital imaging tech, so I was constantly scanning slides and then retouching them. So I spent the beginning of my career in a chair, and I actually asked my employer to give me a chair because my doctor had said you're having problems, and this was at 20 years old. I was already having lower back problems. Yeah, it was bad, and even carpal tunnel syndrome at a very young age. And so I realized later in life that a lot of it was from just not having a strong core. And so now in the last few years, I've been totally focused on it, and my back pain's gone away from doing these like yoga and just different exercises that involve really concentrating on the core. And I mean, when you feel your core, like it's amazing. Like my core is so strong over the last like 3 years that I've built it up and focused on it. And it's just some basic exercise. I only spend like 20 minutes a day doing it. And it's amazing just the feel. Like I'm 46 years old and I jump on a skateboard almost every day, and I'm skateboarding around the neighborhood with the kids, chasing them around. I check the mail like that. But to me, that's the biggest thing is when I'm 70 years old, I want to be able to do that kind of thing where I'm not like, walking around with a walker, because I spent the time now and acknowledge that, it's just 20 minutes, like right before, well, you guys are still talking at 6 a.m. I'm on that elliptical just jamming. And it's not even a real Peloton. It's just an elliptical, like not a super pricey one, but I pretend that I have a Peloton because Pelotons are like $2,000 or whatever. But I still watch the inspirational shows because the people on there they're super interesting. Like you could tell that they take the time to rehearse and really get a rhythm down before they do their show. So it's inspiring stuff too.
I think it's interesting. Nobody's mentioned a stand-up desk yet.
It's in the questions.
Oh, okay. Let's go to
first one.
Let's go to that question. Take them out of
Ryan
order.
Rood. Yeah. Ryan Rood in Cookeville, Tennessee. He asked that question. It's what are folks' thoughts on the biggest pros and cons for standing desks to help stay healthy?
Jeffrey.
Trying to stand. This is actually a standing desk, and then I ended up getting a tall, high chair that can go down to regular height. And the whole idea was on the show, I was going to stand and sit because I do have some back problems. Being a drummer, I have to worry about that a little bit more because of the compression of the spine on the drum throne. And so I made the plan last year. I got it all set up. Of course, I had the standing desk all for a few years now, and then I found myself sitting a lot, and so it's really just you got to get yourself in that frame of mind to stand. But the other factor on that is how I have my camera set up, and going from a standing situation to a sitting situation means a whole bunch of adjusting of cameras and monitors and things like that, just to get in on the standing height versus the sitting height.
Charles.
For most people that are just on their laptop and they're not doing exactly what we're doing, we have 18 monitors and everything weighs a lot. Like that's been the issue that we have found with those. They can't hold or push a lot of weight, but for the majority of people, like in offices, it's great because, as Chris mentioned before, your body is exceedingly good and efficient at adapting to the circumstances that you give it the majority of the time. It's going to
if you give it crap, it will adapt to that.
Yeah. And it's actually so extreme that, let's say, if you're an astronaut, one of the first things that happens the first time that you use the restroom, your body starts to release a lot of minerals that you no longer need to maintain stronger bones because now you're in zero gravity. So it's using resources on Earth to keep you a certain way, right? So it's adapting that intensely.
Interesting.
So yeah, what we found is that on a standing desk, it's actually good for people to just break the monotony of sitting down and having your hip flexors get all tight and your glutes get stretched out, and that's usually a problem that leads to many other things. But if you can manage it, it's a great thing. Yeah.
It's interesting. I want to interject here for a second. Jeffrey said the problem with the standing desk is actually forcing himself to actually use it. You mentioned the problem with the standing desk in our line of work is we have a lot of weight on our desk, and most of the adjustable ones have a hard time pushing up and down that amount of weight. It's got me to thinking, maybe I should just go full bore 100% and build a desk that is only for standing. Forget the adjustable thing. Like just do it. I wonder how long I would last at that. Let's go Chris and then Andrew.
Well, to answer your thought, Chris, I think is a great idea. I think that what Jeffrey mentioned about having a chair that you can kind of use, just as your body is getting used to it, because you don't want to, if you're not used to it, it's going to feel foreign. It's going to feel unnatural at first. Jasmine Lee also put a note in there, and Jasmine mentioned the standing desk and a balance board. And I was desperately looking for the YouTube video before this started because I just watched a video about not a board, but it was just like this kind of like foam thing that the person stood on, just kept things up, because standing static is better than sitting static, but it's still static. So having a balance board seems intense, which is what Jasmine mentioned, but right. Or like, I have a couple of these things, sit fit discs, and you'd get one for each foot, but that's a bit much also. But there are things in between that are kind of like Airex makes a pad that's like a thick foam pad that it creates just a little bit of cush, but it also creates like a slight amount of instability, but not enough to drive you crazy. So
he's standing on a mattress.
Well, but like, you can get like this version as opposed to this version.
Yeah.
So
Andrew?
Yeah, we've found, so in our theater, we actually added standing desks for both our lighting and sound operators. So we put the sound console for the booth and the lighting console on standing desks or adjustable desks, and Some of the operators like being able to switch it up in the middle of the show, and we are adjusting, so it's taking the whole console up, it's taking some extra screens up with them as well, so they're able to stay a little more focused with what they're doing as well. Sometimes they feel they can get more into it when they're driving their legs into the console as well, or whatever
I
they
tell you,
might feel.
I used to dream about building a permanent install for my audio system years ago, and I wanted a desk that had a great chair, great height. I could reach my console, reach up to the gain knobs, but I could push that chair back, and there would be a trap door, the width of the console, that you would just flip back, and then I would step down, and now my head would be at the same height, but I would be standing in a hole.
Right.
I always thought that would be a great way to do it. Then you don't have to worry about lifting I had like a 300-pound copper console, but
Yeah, and this is a small digital desk in our auditorium booth, so it's not a large situation
I
like
just thought a
that.
trap
but-
door would be perfect. You just step down
Perfect,
into
yeah.
a hole. Chris.
I don't have personal experience with standing desks. I only have one room in my apartment, and it serves every purpose. So I can't really justify getting, because I can't watch TV if everything's too high. So, but I did interview, I think his name was MJ. It was a gentleman who was on our panel early on, and I interviewed him last year via Zoom to ask him about his standing desk, because I knew he had a standing desk. And he said that he had an uplift desk, and he said that the reason why he got that brand was because it was more reliable over time and held up longer over time than the IKEA equivalents. I mean, everybody wants to get the IKEA, and it's a popular choice, but my understanding is that uplift is just better built and probably will manage those heavier desk loads better over time.
I will say we have one of the IKEA ones at the office, which has been empty for a year. And I will say it's not quite big enough for an edit system. And it stresses a little bit, lifting the weight. I couldn't put the speakers on it. So if I was standing, the speakers were not ideally positioned. It was a little weak. But I'm actually liking this idea of just saying, I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to take this desk and raise it up. I will also say there's another issue. I have always been an advocate for putting something underneath your monitor to get it up to eye level. And I like to be eye level in the middle of like the upper half of the screen. Okay. So maybe a quarter of a third of the way down. That's my preferred. But because of office hours, and I actually built I may have shown them earlier, little like mini tall makers, like little monitor stands, little 8x8 boxes. And I made a 2-inch and I made a 4-inch, and I was playing with, what worked the best. But I ended up taking them all out to get my webcam just slightly above my eye level. And I'm wondering if it's been affecting me, because I do have to read the bottom of the monitor, and there's some times where I see I feel myself, bending over to read it. Go, Chris.
I know for me, I have a 23-inch monitor just below my camera, and then I have a 40-inch television above it. So I spend equal time just kind of like, neither one is ideal, but the net result, I think, is pretty evened out, I think. And then what I have is when I'm looking at the speaker, like Chris, you're my speaker view right now. I literally have your screen right behind the camera. It's almost like a reverse of a teleprompter, where you're behind the camera instead of in front of the camera.
So there's a camera basically over my chin.
Literally exactly right where you just had your hand. Yeah.
Do you have a wide shot of that? Do you have another camera angle?
Yeah, I can.
I'd like to see that.
Right up in a second. Yeah.
Only on this panel can you just randomly say, let me see your other camera angle, and you'll probably get a positive response. Oh, okay. Oh yeah, crazy. So you can't You can't see if I smile, but you can see my eyes. All right. Yeah. Clever. Had not thought of doing something that basic. Next question, guy. Last question.
Tim Cooper.
Or are there
Tim
more?
Cooper in York, South Carolina says, I've been experiencing sharp pain in my lower right dominant arm from elbow to wrist for maybe 6 weeks or so. Dr. Google suggests tennis elbow. Curious if any other desk jockey has experienced similar issues and how they handled it.
Mr. Comfort?
I had, I guess, golfer's elbow, which is the other side of the arm. Mine was from a combination of being a body worker and then also a photographer. So holding my camera in portrait mode. And so then I got the battery pack so that I could, regardless of how the camera is oriented, I'm still holding it here, not here. And then I have so many things that add to my daily life that I'm not sure if being just at the desk was the cause of any of it. I think it's the camera. I think it's doing massage work on clients back when I was doing that more often. But it's definitely a real thing, and it's an insidious issue. And you can find exercises to kind of just strengthen. I've done rubber bands around the finger and gone out like that against the rubber band, which strengthens the extensors and calms down the flexors a little bit. So that can help.
Andrew?
One thing I've always found, I sort of switched jobs a little bit and ended up with more time at the desk, and found, and this was probably 6 or 8 years ago, that the mouse was the problem for me. I was moving my arm too much with the mouse, so I switched to a trackball, and I did it at home, I did it at work, and it made a huge improvement because I wasn't using the where I was using the mouse and how I was using it was causing pain in my arm.
One of the things that I will say about mice, and I've probably said this before, that I feel that the resolution, it's not called resolution, I don't know what they call it, but I call it the resolution of your mouse adjustment makes a giant difference. I have a mouse in my hand all day long. A lot of people set their mice to what I call twitchy mode, meaning I can move my hand this much and go back and forth across my. I actually set mine quite a bit to the left of that, so that I literally I actually move my hand more. Now, that's counterintuitive because what you're thinking of is, I don't want to move my arm so much. However, what I find is when the mouse is in twitchy mode, every muscle south of my elbow gets super tight because I'm trying to hold it very carefully to make tiny adjustments when I have to make tiny adjustments. And I'm an editor, I'm always making tiny adjustments. So when I make the mouse more fluid, or I literally have to pick it up 1 or 2 times to get it across the screen, I can relax my hand and it doesn't fatigue the same way. There's another thing I'm going to talk about later, but I'll get to that. Charles.
Yeah, I actually take a slightly different approach. I have a large Wacom and my mouse, and I actually set it so it's depending on the speed in which I move. I can go across all my screens, but then I move slower and I can fine tune. Now, that being said, I would take the approach of, if physically the hardest thing that your arms are doing all day is being on a computer, it's sort of like you being on the highway with your car that maxes out at 2000 RPM, and it's maxed out on the highway for hours.
So what
right?
you're saying is, dude, you got to exercise more.
So what you need to do, or what you can do, what I do is that I make sure that me sitting at my desk is an easy thing, because for the 45 minutes or an hour that I take to work out, that is physically more straining on my nervous system and my muscles. And as I take time to recover, then when I'm sitting at my desk, I feel no pain. The times that I'm not able to do that and my threshold starts to come down, I become more acclimated to sitting down, and this becomes my baseline. That's when the problems start to increase. So I would keep that in mind.
That's a really good point. I think my baseline since COVID is super sedentary, and this conversation is really bothering me. Chris, then Guy.
Well, Chris, I think you just made a good point. It shouldn't bother you, but I think that awareness is half the battle. As you pointed out, everybody was sitting up as soon as, and the information, just knowing that your body is supposed to do that, even if it doesn't feel natural, that's half the battle. And that's what I deal with all the time. The other thing, a general statement, is that there are some systems in the body that only function when we move properly, like lymph drainage from the legs back up to the main part of the body. What only happens, or even circulation, like blood circulation for that matter, only works truly well when our legs are moving, because that's part of the pumping motion is the muscle contractions. So all of these suggestions for standing desks and mouse position and all those things are fixes for the real problem, which is we need to move more. Before we are editors or colorists or audio engineers, we are human beings first and foremost, and the body functions with certain rules. And so you can't deny that. I'd like to just show something quickly for the mouse position, though, if I may. So again, if I go back to this image, and the far right image is okay. Yep. So this is something I put together for my cousin who didn't have a budget, and I just gave her the idea of just getting some TV tables to help position and getting the humerus, which is that upper arm of the body, the upper arm bone, in line with the rest of the skeleton is way better than reaching forward for some of the pains that people were talking about, like Andrew and whatnot. And then having the mouse here on this table beside me so that my humerus never has to leave that aligned position. And that's where so a trackpad on a laptop is one of the worst things ever. Even if you're using a laptop, at least get an external mouse that you can bring over, either the way Chris does it or Andrew or whomever, where the humerus is just more in line with the spine of the body. And then you're not reaching over to that trackpad, because I feel like that trackpad has caused so many issues for so many people.
And just for the record, let's just assume, or let's imagine the possibility that somebody doesn't actually know what a humerus is.
Sure, it's the upper arm. It's the upper arm of the body. So yeah, if I go back to this,
idea what you were talking about, but
sorry, if I go back to this image,
it didn't sound funny.
Right, it didn't sound right. Sorry. So the humerus is my upper arm, and from my shoulder down to my elbow.
So you're and you're saying that in an ideal world, the upper arm is pretty much vertical.
Yep, pretty much vertical, in line
between your ear and your hip.
Exactly, as opposed to this guy,
looks a lot like you.
Yeah, I know. It's unfortunate. I feel my heart goes out to him, but yeah, anyway.
Guy, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I had a coworker who introduced me to this Beachbody on demand a few years ago, and I used it with my Apple TV, and this was just a godsend. Some of these workouts in here, I mean, they're just incredible. So it's like $99 a year for this, but man, it is worth every penny, because I mean, the amount that you'd pay a personal trainer, which Chris, I believe you're a personal trainer, right? I don't know what you charge per day, per week, but if you're, especially in COVID times, just locked in, this is a great way to just, get your exercise in. But some of the things that I learned, I still do them every day. So for the wrist, especially the plank position where, you go down and you're just like doing a push-up. And then I do like these yoga push-ups now where my elbows are tighter in. So it's building up strength and deltoids and wrist flexibility. You never really think about wrist flexibility, but being mouse operators, I mean, it's huge to build up that strength and that flexibility. So John Ilson sent me a little thing that I think it came from Zoom, which they have their employees do I'll put it in the Discord. It's just a little plaque that I have on my wall that just shows you putting your hand against a wall and then stretching it, like pushing into it. And it just helps every couple hours to just, avoid that carpal tunnel syndrome just build up. So doing these stretches can really help. And like somebody said, we're not medical professional. Well, maybe Chris is, but take my advice with a grain of salt. But I do highly recommend the Beachbody On Demand and watching what those guys are doing, because they are the pros.
Mr. Comfort.
The only thing I'd add to that is if you do have a real problem, you should see a specialist. I think Guy is an exception to the rule. He is very physically skilled. And I mean that as a compliment, but also just a reality. It's like, I think Guy can probably get away with things that some people just can't. So, and I think that learning the things correctly and then using something like the Beachbodies as your reinforcement for exercise or your resource for continuing an exercise program is a great idea. I think if you have an issue or even the beginnings of an issue, see a specialist so that you can get the correct education. And I've seen so many people who just think they're doing an exercise correctly and they just missed a key detail. Like those chaturanga push-ups, you've got to be very careful that you don't roll the shoulders forward when you're chaturangaing and you blow out the front capsule of the shoulder. So, but I don't think Guy's going to do that because Guy's just physically skilled, or he just has a background that he's able to do it correctly. But just make sure you're getting good instruction and then reinforce with those pool of exercises, just so you're not doing it incorrectly. So,
I have a question to those of you in the know. This happened to me about, 4 years ago. There was a woman I was working with. I only saw her once a month. I was having problems with my wrist. It's really painful. I put a wrist brace on, not knowing what I was doing. Didn't want to go see a doctor. I saw her once a month. On the second month, she says, "Are you still wearing that thing?" I go, "Yeah, my wrist is just killing me." This is what she recommended doing. Go to Target. Get a bucket. They have buckets that are two-sided. Fill one side with the hottest tap water you can, and one side fill it with ice water. Put your wrist in one side until you can't stand it, and then put it in the other side. Go back and forth until both sides of the bucket are the same temperature. And she said, do that for a week, once a day. I did it one night, literally one night. And the next day, I was done with the wrist brace. My wrist was fine. I felt great. She said the theory behind it is that the shocking of the water going back and forth was kind of reactivating, sort of waking up, like that audio effect, Mickey, waking up the white blood cells in my body, and all the white blood cells were going, "Hey, something's wrong over here. What can we go do to fix?" And that, my standard way of living, it just got my body to think, that's normal, leave it alone. Is there any truth to that, or what is the cold water doing, or cold and hot water? Charles?
I think it's also just stimulating.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No,
my
go ahead.
apologies. I think it's also just stimulating blood flow and lymph flow. Any of the fluids in the body are going to be moving quickly back and forth in a way that they just haven't, because they've not been challenged. So, and it's the back and forth that I think is the important part of that. I do something called muscle activation techniques, which is a manual therapy, like a massage therapy type thing, that probably does a similar thing to what that ice water is doing, except I'm activating the muscles themselves that are dormant. A lot of times, either through repetitive strain or just through a traumatic injury, even if it's an old one, part of the body shuts down or a muscle falls asleep, and not even like paralyzed, but it just is not doing its share of the work. And so everything around it just starts clenching. That one muscle just was not active and everything else is clenching. And just by reactivating that one muscle and saying, "Hey guys, I'm here. You can calm down. I'm doing my share of the work. You guys only have to worry about your share of the work." And I feel like that's the metaphor behind what's happening. And I think it happens with manual therapy, but then also your hydrotherapy or cryotherapy.
I thought it was super interesting what you said earlier, Chris, about how every muscle has a muscle that it fights against.
Yeah.
What was the term you used?
They're antagonists to each other. And they're synergists also, muscles that help each other do a job. But you never want the muscle doing working outside of its design, you know? So it's like, as soon as one muscle, again, kind of falls asleep or goes offline, or, you know, its neighbors don't know it's there anymore, everybody else is going to panic and just clench. And I think that's where low back problems come from. I think that like these repetitive strains, like the tennis elbow and the golfer's elbow and whatever it was you were dealing with. But you proved a great point. It's like self-diagnosing can go so far, but one key bit of information cleared up your whole problem, and you were no longer wearing a brace. So
I was fascinated by it, and I still have that bucket, and every once in a while, I also have some trouble with a bad foot injury from a decade ago, and sometimes my wife will do that, and she'll go, "Oh, I hate that cold water, but let's do the bucket thing," and it helps. Charles, what's up?
I'm actually just going to say, let's get to the questions because I know Alex is going to cut us off.
Okay. How many more questions? Let's gauge
Got
this.
10.
Oh, come on. I thought you said we had 2. All right, let's blast through some. Thank you, Charles.
Alrighty. Next one's coming in from Laura Thompson in Beaumont, Texas.
Hey,
When
Laura.
talking about health, I think mental health is important. How is the panel taking care of themselves?
Really? You think I'm doing anything for my mental health? Charles.
I do take time to meditate. It takes a while for you to actually get in the groove, but it's just like an exercise. You're training yourself to be able to, it's not about not thinking. It's about acknowledging that you're having thoughts and then letting them go. And you could just be in the moment. And I take that in the morning. I do like 10, 15 minutes. And also a part of my time at the gym is I'm very focused on how I'm moving. And I make sure that I do that every day. And it's been extremely beneficial in my life.
Yeah. I'll say I have grown to cherish silence. Like, I really love silence. Chris.
I'm going to completely misquote this, but one of the many studies I'd read over the past year talked about the importance of getting outside to where your eyes aren't focused on a close object, but rather on the horizon. Walking and repetitive motion like walking or cycling or elliptical can get the brain into a certain wave state, but then being outside and not in front of a close object changes your fight or flight also somehow. And I don't remember exactly how it works, but that will also change the fight or flightness of it or whatever, where if you're not focusing on something close, your body relaxes and just looks off into the distance or something. And I don't remember exactly how that works, but it was a real thing. I just don't remember what exactly it was.
Right.
So getting out, walking, but outside and eyes just on nothing close.
Horizon.
So, yeah.
Guy, next question.
Next one's coming in from Ryan Root in Cookeville, Tennessee. What are some of the best techniques to keep focus on your posture and keep things correct? I find it a big struggle to remember my stance/posture. Are the gadgets frequently advertised helpful for that, or are they just malarkey?
Yeah, let's concentrate on those gadget things. Chris, Charles, you seen these things? Like, wear this weird thing on your back?
So at first, if you're trying to do something that is different to your norm, it's going to be very hard for you. Your brain has a 6-lane highway to being sedentary, and now you're trying to cut across the forest and pave a new way to do something different. So I set some timers for myself, like stand up straight, that goes off my watch every 10, 15 minutes. Do that too. So I slowly start to do it on my own, and I build that memory. So that becomes my new baseline, my new standard. It's going to be difficult at first. You're trying to do something that you're not used to. So just acknowledge that. But remember, it's not a sprint. It's more of a marathon. And just a little bit every day makes a long difference throughout your life.
Chris, then Jim?
I've never used any of those gadgets specifically. Back many, many years ago, just for the sake of the client, I'd sometimes tape their back from left shoulder to right hip and right shoulder to left hip, so that they had like a physical feedback mechanism of, oh, I'm deviating from good posture. Let me get it back up again. I think if those gadgets are going to work properly, they need to be placed exactly correctly. And then understanding what is the fix. Again, I've seen people jut their chin back thinking they're fixing their posture, where that's just a different kind of malfunction. But if a person is taught to bring the sternum up first and then just get the head in alignment after that, it's much less jamming. So I think that using those devices could be really good if they're placed exactly correctly, and if you know what to do when it starts beeping and what the right way is and the wrong way to find posture.
Jim?
Yeah, I just want to say that just as we started to talk about this question, my Apple Watch tapped me on my wrist and said, "It's time to stand," which of course I'm going to ignore currently.
Next question.
Tommy Tachance is coming in from St. Paul, Minnesota, and Tommy's on the panel. I see the pronunciation is chance, as in talk. Can you pronounce that for me, Tommy?
Sure,
Did
it
I
is
say that right?
chunts.
Chance. Okay,
Yeah.
Tommy Tachance.
No,
Do you
you
guys
can
use
kind of skip the T and just say
chance?
chance. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, chance. Perfect. All right, thank you. Do you guys use Fitbit type devices to remind you to move? Chip just answered that.
The answer, yes, some of us do. Next question. Let's try and get through some of these.
Another
just
one
heard
from
from
Tommy. Has martial arts or Tai Chi been mentioned yet?
It has not been mentioned. But I'm sure there's some good stuff.
Yeah.
Somebody said,
Do any of you folks
Charles?
use that at all?
Charles?
I have not done Tai Chi. I've done Jiu-Jitsu. I've done Muay Thai. I did capoeira for like 8 years.
I do not want to get in a fight with you.
I have to stay active. It's one of the things that keeps me sane.
Let's go to the next question.
Next one's coming in from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. Opinions
Tony.
on Apple Fitness Plus?
Is that the one that has all the screens and like you can watch the stuff on the stuff? That's great language. Chris, then Charles.
I think that's the one that Alex was talking about that he really loves. I don't want to speak for him, and I've never used it, but I've heard good things, I think, from him.
Charles?
I've used it once, and it's mostly because I like to do my own thing. But if you're starting off and you need the guidance, a lot of people do need that to get themselves started. It's great. The production quality is great. They're trying to incorporate well-being into the Apple ecosystem, and that is a great aspect of their company. So yeah, try it out.
I'm going to tell you, I'm literally sitting here trying to. I've been calculating how tall do I make my stand-up desk. I need to measure. So my desk is approximately my elbow height. So then I'll just stand up, measure down, and now I'm starting to design it in my head. I think I might do this. Because I've been having a lot of troubles. So I'm considering doing this. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Mark Harder. It looks more like a statement. It says, Chris Comfort, Mr. Comfort, thank you for all of you.
Nice. Next.
There you go. Next is Scott Rothizer in Las Vegas. I have a stand-up desk in my garage. I know standing on the cement is not the best. What should I get to stand on?
Yeah, Chris mentioned it. He has those little blue things. Guy, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a foam pad. A couple of these folks at our office use these as well, where it has actually some raised areas of different shapes. And so throughout the day, I'll move mine, I'll twist it around, and I'll stand in just different ways to. I learned this from NAB. Like a lot of times people will say your number one tip is to wear different shoes every day because you want to kind of mix things up so you don't get calluses in the same spot as you're walking 12 miles a day. So I like to just turn my pad around and try to just stand in a different form on my feet so they don't kind of develop the same, calluses or whatever.
I will tell you, as an exhibitor, the number one tip: double carpet padding underneath your carpet. People will come to your booth. They'll go, this feels nice. They stay longer. Mr. Comfort?
Yeah, I was just going to say that Eric's pad, I don't know if I'm allowed to share my screen. but if I can show what that looks like.
We can set you up to do that, I think. Oh, I can't.
Okay.
Mickey can.
Let's
Chad
see
can.
here.
Oh, you are now co-host. You can share your screen. That was
Okay.
quick.
Do we see that?
Yep.
Okay, so that's the Eric's pad. And then if I can, let me stop sharing this and I'll just show you a different version of the same thing here. And you can just see, you can see someone actually standing on it, I believe. Let's see here. Is it this one? Yeah. So if I go to here, and that's just how you just stand on it. I don't know if you guys can see that.
Yep.
But
Yep. We see it.
different uses, but it can just be used for standing as well. So, but I like Chris's idea too of the double mattress pad idea. Probably works just as well.
No, well, carpet pad.
Oh, sorry, carpet pad.
So literally,
Sorry,
and if you have to pay extra for carpet, you have to pay extra for carpet pad. At the convention center, if you pay more, they'll put double levels of carpet pad. And literally, when you walk into that booth, it's just, it's
heaven. You hear the
it's
angels
heaven.
singing. It's like, oh.
Next question.
Roz McNulty in Vancouver, Canada. Anybody doing exercise with an Oculus?
Ew. Like the headset thing? That just makes me nauseous. I don't want to think about that. Let's go to the next question. I mean, seriously,
Actually, I have a comment
isn't
on
there...
that one. The first time that I went to CES and went to the Oculus booth, I was wearing my nice suit slacks, and they had this robot fighting game, and the robot threw a grenade, and it was about to explode, and I dove across the floor in the booth. This was like they put rubber foam on the wall so you wouldn't hurt yourself, but I almost put a hole through my suit pants because it was so real. It was crazy. Yeah, that Robo Recall game on Oculus, man, it'll give you a workout. I was sweating after it. So
Interesting.
You can.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many more questions? We're going to
2.
lose our time in. Okay. We have 2 minutes. Go.
Next one's coming in from Hasmuk in Cape Town. I am impressed by Chris Comfort's anatomical and physiological knowledge. Which med school did Chris attend? Just curious.
I've been a personal trainer for 23 years. So, and I took it more seriously than I think most personal trainers do. I didn't go down the path of like, pecs and biceps. It was more like corrective exercise, postural correction, post-rehab conditioning, prenatal, postpartum. So I studied all those things and took it seriously. Also, my mom's a nurse, and I knew what a duodenum was when I was 6 years old. So there you go. I knew all the terms very early on.
That scares me. Next question.
Last one coming in from Gregory Wheeler in Maryland. I have a burning pain under my armpit on my right side, and it is constant. I have gone to therapy, and no one can fix it. MRI does not show any pinched nerves. Any ideas of what could be causing it?
Wow. We have 30 seconds, and that sounds like a really serious thing. Charles, go try.
My fiance has a similar problem, and what we've worked at is that she needs to do some exercises that activate those muscles and those nerves for her to regain control of it, because it's firing on its own, and it's doing it so often that it's causing an inflammation.
10 seconds.
That could be it.
Go, Chris Comfort. 5 seconds.
Sorry, I'd say that external rotation exercises are always the best go-to.
Okay.
Because we all internally rotate by default.